Welcome back to the Men Tell All, or shall we say the Men Tell Very Little. Not a lot of drama on this tell all, but I actually enjoyed it and I want to get to why. But let's talk all things Charity in her beautiful red dress, the Bachelorette, and Gerry, the Golden Bachelor. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back, everyone. I have to admit, I'm always a little bit torn about the tell-all. It feels like we're rolling in the season, we're getting deep into fantasy suites, and then it's like, disruption, we've got the tell-all. And I have to say, in the past, I've not been a huge fan, though I have personally been to the tell-all, because sometimes they feel very negative and overproduced. Why? Because usually the tell-alls are an audition for Bachelor in Paradise. That's right, all the cast comes back, it's been a few months, and they know that they want to get on Paradise, and so we see a lot of like forced drama and conflict. But this one was different because it's not an audition for Bachelor in Paradise, because this episode, the Men Tell All, Bachelor in Paradise has already been filmed. So the timing of it just seemed a little bit different. I think it was because we had a longer break between Zach's season and Charity's season, and therefore the filming just was a little bit off track. But anyway, I thought there were some good things because I'm not someone who loves all that negativity and all that drama, so I want to focus on the positives. And I don't know about you, but I really feel like Jesse Palmer is kind of coming into his own as the host. What did you think? I thought Jesse was actually just more playful, and he joked around and said something about, Yosef has a daughter at home. He has more humor. And that to me felt like it just made for a better episode. So I love that. Okay, but let's just start out. I'm just going to go through and give you my thoughts. It started out with Sean. Sean came in hot for Brayden. We've already been expecting this, right? Sean had been in a video saying, Brayden, don't come to the Men Tell All. And let's face it, Brayden is like the only villain. Well, Sean, a little bit. But so it's sort of like these two, Sean and Brayden, kind of duking it out. And, they're kind of insulting each other mildly. Nothing horrible like we've seen in the past. But Sean's getting into the beginning about thinking that, Brayden had said things about Charity that she was quote unquote, he questioned her character. And then there was this whole issue about had he called her classless or not. But none of that really seemed all that pertinent. And Brayden seemed to kind of back down pretty quickly too. Like, hey guys, I left when I wasn't interested and I pulled myself out. So it's not like there's much we can go after Brayden for. But all the men clearly did feel one thing, that Brayden didn't read the room well. He was a bit selfish in his pursuit and he took time away from the guys, and that was really precious, right? And Tanner talked about that and John talked about that, and all of the men could agree that Brayden was just focused on himself. Okay, and as I had said in a previous video, I just don't think anybody's going to come to Brayden's defense. I did see Aaron S. He said something about that Brayden was leading with his emotions because Brayden had said, well, they asked the question, why did you come back? And he's like, well, I had more to say and I didn't feel like I'd said everything. I'm like, this happens often, right? Oftentimes most people feel like there's something that was left unsaid. And I did like what Michael said. He said, again, dude, it wasn't going to further your relationship. You'd already left. Why come back and take up precious time for everyone else? So we all just are kind of like agreeing to disagree. So I'm not sure if Brayden sees himself clearly. I don't know. I feel kind of neutral about Brayden. Not that he's an awful villain. I don't think that. But I think there's just this whole thing about like being authentic and like just be yourself. I think actually that can be damaging. And so sometimes I feel like people just double down in that and hide behind that. Like, who are you really, Brayden, authentically? I get that you're a nurse and we see him on the hot seat, but I don't know. I just didn't feel like, it feels like a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of words, and I'm not quite really sure who Brayden is and if he's really all that different. So anyway, I just didn't feel like we got very far on this. And then, telling Adrian about that he was like mincing his words. Well, we should, right? You shouldn't be swearing on national TV. So again, not a lot of tea or drama there. Okay, so moving on. So what is the tea and the drama? Jesse talks about the tea, and basically there's really nothing, right? There's not much going on here, but something that happened after the fact that happened on Instagram that sort of blew up for people. This, I really thought they just had no other content, so they put it in, but it really should have been left on the editing floor. This whole thing where now Pete starts talking up, and then of course Caleb, the cowboy, comes in and says, wait, who were you? I mean, this was all planned. This whole idea that it sounds like Peter just wasn't really a likable guy. I mean, even John said, you come in and you position yourself and who's not here for the right reasons. And I don't know, maybe Peter read the Game of Roses book, How to Win the Bachelor, and he was just trying to be kind of obstinate or something. But what happened was, in this quote-unquote inside joke, that, interesting enough, I had no idea they had Zoom sessions, maybe to just talk about social media, to talk about other things, which I didn't know if previous seasons have done this. But they just did the FP, as a dig to Peter. I mean, if Peter had been a super nice guy, they wouldn't have done that. But then Peter had to make up this whole thing about, my family and my pastor group saw this. And who knows if any of that is true. But it did sound like, he tried to monetize, which a lot of people do. And that just seemed kind of silly. And then so I did a little bit more digging on Peter. Interesting enough, I think he had something like 25,000 followers on Instagram already, which is a lot more than many of the other guys had. So maybe he was just a little bit more savvy to that because he is a pilot, and I get that. But where were we going with this? Now, I will have to say, what was disappointing to me is that because of that, it just did leave this negative taste. So then, who are the people who were involved in this? In fact, in the top 4, it was Aaron B., it was Dotun, and Xavier. And I'm like, ooh. And then on top of that, it was also Brayden, James, John, Sean, Spencer were the guys who were involved in this. Thankfully, not everybody participated of the 25 guys. The people who didn't participate were Adrian, Caleb, Joe, Joey, Michael, Tanner, and Taylor. So those were the guys who did not participate in all of this. But what I did appreciate, and we're going to talk a lot about Xavier, is that Xavier was the only one who said, hey man, I'm sorry we did that, we shouldn't have. And then he turned around, looked him in the eye, and shook his hand. And the reason I do like the tell-alls is because for this reason, for redemption, for apologies, for taking a look inward and saying, ugh, that wasn't good. Let me try that again. So I really like that Xavier did that because I thought all the guys should have done that, honestly, because then they got a little nitpicky about defending their behavior, and I just thought, okay, you guys, this is just all silly. But here's another fact you may not know, that so the season airs, okay, they filmed charity season in March and April. Remember, it was short. And then now they're filming the tell-all in like late July. And then there's a little delay before they release that. So all these guys are kind of like far removed from this, not really bothered. Even Bachelor in Paradise is only 3 weeks for the filming. So you can see why all of them just don't feel like this is all that important. And in fact, I was like, where was Warnick? He wasn't there. were there other people missing that I was hoping to see? I mean, it just felt like, again, there were some guys there that we had really just didn't know that much about. So where were they going to pull the content from? Okay, so now let's get to what is the traditional quote unquote hot seat, right? Where they pull you up on the seat. And in fact, also if you follow Bachelor data, interesting enough, where they sit on the stage is really important too. And the seat in particular that was important was Sean's seat, kind of the one sort of closest to the stage and the sort of audience. But he was in that spot, and I thought, interesting. That says something about whether they're going to be the Bachelor or go to Bachelor in Paradise. And there were a number of men who I think are going to be going to Bachelor in Paradise from this group. But so now we have Brayden on the hot seat. And again, another little dig from Jesse, like, oh, so Brayden, you said that Charity could reach out to you. I'm here if she wants to. And he's like, how's that going? Has she reached out to you? And he's like, no. So I thought that was, again, kind of funny. But I liked that Brayden pulled himself together. You know, he did sort of dress up in that. I have a little sparkles on for Brayden and red for Charity. You know, he tried to sort of look nice, look different from the other guys, right? Xavier's in a tie and a suit, and he's got this, you know, more feminine, artsy, you know, and his earrings. But he does kind of go all in, right? And he did talk about the positives, and he gave Charity a lot of kudos that, you know, she's in psych, I'm in psych, well, he's a nurse. And that she was very patient, right? And that she held a lot of space for me. And I think that was, again, good of him, because we see when Charity comes out, she's got something to say to him. Now, Jesse's trying to stir it up a little bit and saying, I have never seen a group of guys attack another guy. Because Brayden did, in all intents and purposes, he did come in. We knew this. The producers put him up to it. Hey, is there anything left unsaid? He came in, probably gave directions, hit that room on the right, and then he tries to walk out, but the guys are pissed, and that was led by Aaron, right? And he really did, and he was consistent in his story, just want to get the heck out of there, and then needed to feel like he said, oh, there was no van, and then when he said, you know, driver, or when Aaron said, you know, hit the gas or whatever, there was nobody in there. So the guys were just obviously really upset, and at that point, because time was the commodity that all of them were fighting for. So I thought they lightened it up a little bit. They did the whole earrings with Jesse, which I thought was kind of fun. And then they gave us a little teaser, right? They gave us the clip of Bachelor in Paradise with Kat. Now, interesting enough, Kat and Charity are like supposedly best friends. I follow them both on Instagram. Kat's mother had actually asked me about my Charity doll. And so I can't wait to see this, because I can only imagine Charity talking to Kat about, oh my God, I got to tell you about this guy Brayden before you go on Bachelor in Paradise. And then she's making out with him. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be juicy. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that. But, you know, Kat's so cute. She is a hot woman. And I loved that she's like, oh, he's like a golden retriever. But, you know, he looks like Johnny Depp, right? He's a great kisser. She's a great kisser. All of that is fun. So I thought he's there as a little teaser for Bachelor in Paradise. Okay, so let's get to what I thought was the story of the night, and that's Xavier. I put Xavier in his nice little suit here because he was really dressed well. I thought he had a look of sadness on his face the whole time. I mean, I did not catch Xavier smiling once. He looked very intense. I really do think this guy is legit in that he's a thinker. This whole time we've been saying, you know, he's been struggling because his head is telling him, I don't do drama, this doesn't fit. He's a scientist. He was really grappling the whole time with the head and the heart. And I really liked, again, back to the reason for the tell-all, are these redemptive moments that he talked about himself making a mistake. I mean, how can you pile anything on Xavier? he's admitting it. He realizes now that, open mouth, insert foot, that the way that he planned to deliver it was not how it came out. And I thought Jesse was great for them calling him out on, why did you tell her at that point that you loved her when you were walking out? And he said, I just felt like I needed to. But here's what I really actually liked about what Xavier said. And we don't oftentimes hear this. And so I wanted to take a pause on that how hard it is to not feel the love reciprocated and to be very well aware of the competition. I'd said before that I thought Xavier really said, hey, these other guys are great. Like, there is a moment for me with just some low self-esteem for Xavier. So I'm so thrilled to hear that he has gotten into therapy and said, I need to do some work on this. Like, that's like the best outcome. Like, how can you fault this guy? But he said, I wasn't exactly expecting her to tell me she loved me back, but on the one hand, I have this fear that my love will not be reciprocated. And I was like, ooh, ouch. And that just seemed so human, right? That everybody's got to have that fear that I'm putting myself out there, I'm being super vulnerable, and I don't know where I stand. So, so often, if you just go back to Xavier's words, he sort of led with, if it's you and I in the end, if this is my person. And I really do believe him. And the work that he's going to do in therapy to look at, why did he cheat? What was going on there? All the things we talked about last week. And then dig a little bit deeper about, there seemed like a naivete when he was talking with his parents in the hometown about, like, how does one make a marriage work? And do you really give up your freedom? So to me, all of those questions were just good. And maybe he's been such a book person in science that he hasn't had these conversations, right? Because I know even for my own boys, when your friends start getting married, and then you start like asking those kinds of questions because you see other people in serious relationship. And somehow Xavier feels just a little bit young for me, not in a naive way, but like just in a book smart way, not really paying attention. I really love that he, again, mentioned therapy, that he's doing his work, that he knows that he needs to do this work, that he wants to be a better person. Like, that, as a therapist myself, is just really very meaningful. So now let's talk about the queen. Our queen, Charity. I put her in red and her hair on the side because, my God, her fit, everything just looked beautiful about Charity. I tried to do my own hair that way. But I also thought, was that a little bit interesting? So her hair on one side, was it so that the men couldn't see her face? I just thought that was kind of an interesting choice, right? She had her part on this side and then more hair here towards the men. And I felt like that was kind of protecting her a little bit. I just felt it was an interesting choice. But overall, of course, she looked gorgeous. She addressed the men. She's handled herself so beautifully. It's not like she has anything to be embarrassed about. And then, of course, Sean, breaks the hot seat code and just kind of comes up, invites himself up. I loved that Jesse called him out. Again, another sort of moment of humor. And, Charity, make us better men. That was nice. I think everybody believed that. Tanner, no, I don't have any other questions. Thank you for the best experience of my life. I think Tanner's going to be going to Bachelor in Paradise. John said, I'm surprised what happened. And again, without skipping a beat, I want you to know, John, that it's not that you're not enough, that you're awesome. And so I love that Charity just, there's no defensiveness. She's just very easygoing, which actually brings me to a comment that somebody had made. Last week, I had said, I really thought that Charity, and I still do, is a secure, functioning person. How she's handled every interaction. She's done it with such class and grace and holds space for other people, but really listens. And someone said to me, well, if she'd been a secure, functioning person, she would have sent Xavier home earlier. I don't think so. I don't think you know how the show works. She was clearly attracted to Xavier, but she didn't have that information. And then when Xavier comes up on the hot seat, we'll get to that. But just because you're a secure, functioning person doesn't mean that you make the right moves all the time, but you don't fall into making the same mistakes if you were an anxiously attached person. So I just want to differentiate that. But let's talk a little bit about now Xavier and Charity. So now Xavier comes up again. We see it in his face. He's holding a lot of guilt and sadness. And, he talks about having been messed up. And Charity, without skipping a beat, she allows him to just share his feelings of sadness and regret and, disappointment, and said, I saw you as my wife. And she doesn't jump in and she doesn't say, oh, it's okay. She doesn't make it okay for him. That's what a secure person does. Like, thank you for sharing. And at some point, he's not sharing anything new. He keeps feeling like he needs to be quote unquote honest, but it wasn't really considering Charity. And so she just lets him talk, which I really appreciated that. But, she does hold her own and say, listen, of everything, I wouldn't have kept you till the end if I had known this. And so her biggest grievance, and I'm glad she got it out, was that, why didn't you tell me sooner? That's the whole point. That it was selfish of Xavier to keep this information till the end, because who knows? She would have kept Aaron. And that's why I think Aaron's still there. That if Aaron had come back and Xavier was still there, he would have gone home, right? But because now she's questioning her other choices because of Xavier's choices. So I liked that she listened to him. I feel like that allowed Xavier to have some closure for himself as best as he could. But I thought this was really one of the best, most respectful breakups. It was good. I look for these moments, and I liked a lot of what I saw. And again, kudos to Charity for being able to not come in with her own agenda or her own anger, just to allow space, and then to know that he had tough feelings. He didn't come in all cocky. He came in with sadness, and she could feel that. So then, of course, he goes and brings back the knitted rose. Cute. I don't know. How did you feel about that? He was thinking of her, and I feel like he wanted to just give her something because he knew that he had taken from her. And I thought it was going to be a scarf, another scarf. But anyway, it's what he does. And so I liked that. Okay, moving on. Then, we've got Kat and John and the Sean and Tanner thing. That just gave, Sean a little bit more room to sort of be goofy. Tanner's like, hey, good for you. The whole thing about not remembering Charity's name, calling her Chastity. Okay. Now, I will tell you, I do love the show promoting the show, and I love success stories. So when we had the three women, Deanna Pappas, we had Desiree, it used to be Hardstock, I forget her new name, and Trista Sutter, used to be Trista Ryan, come back in. I've seen all these women, so I love to see them. They all looked beautiful. I think it's great that we're celebrating 20 years, but does Charity really know these women? I think, of course, Trista was so lovely and trying to say we're all family and we all support each other, and their little tidbits of advice I think were really lovely. Forgiveness. Who doesn't love that message? Trista's message was very sweet. Desiree said, remember to focus on each other. And Deanna says, don't let other people take you down, because they're going to be naysayers, and hold your head high. But here's the story for me. I really do think that this story ends positively. I think she's with Dotun, and I think it's a positive ending, because with Michelle, I don't remember like all of this kind of leading to like the positive feeling. So they already know how the season's played out, and I feel like this is all to bring back, Charity asking for advice from these women. And if it wasn't a great union, I don't think we'd be there. So that's just my own take, but I feel very positive about that. Okay, so all these women, super inspirational, again, great messages. None of us is perfect. And I really love that, because we want to believe in the show. And I think those women have done a good job. And Charity made a really good point. Like, social media is a lot different than it used to be. Okay, and yet the women also said, Charity, you're doing a great job. You really are. So everyone agrees with that. Okay, let's talk about the Golden Bachelor. He stole the night. I don't have an older man. Barbie, I'm going to have to get one. I'll figure that out. But the Golden Bachelor, Gerry. So I learned some things about Gerry. We had already known, right? He was married for 43 years. His wife had died, etc. But I didn't know up to this point that what she had died of. I assumed it was cancer, as most of the time we do. But it turns out a bacterial infection, and she died within a week. I just thought, oh my God, how fast and how difficult that must have been. It's like, somebody dying in a car crash or something so quickly, which is a whole different thing. And here they were later in life, right? They had retired, just bought the dream house. I mean, that was really sad, right? I teared up. I've told you before, my husband is a widower too. So sad for the kids. Again, just the story's going to be sad no matter what. But I thought when they brought Gerry out that it was more light and fun, and we're going to really like this guy, because for me, I grew up in Chicago, in the Midwest, near some lakes, and he just feels like a very Midwestern guy. He's active guy, but he seems like, he's content, right? With his house on the lake, doing his, four-wheel drive, playing pickleball, and he just wants somebody to share his life with him. And I have to say, there were just moments of that little clip that I thought were adorable. Like when he's handing the rose and said, Mildred, do you accept this rose? And Gertrude, I can't give you this rose. I thought that was just hysterical. So loved that for Gerry, that he does also have a sense of humor. And then when he broke the code and said in that clip that, well, I passed the STD check. We don't talk about that very much, but everyone who goes on The Bachelor, Bachelorette has to pass an STD check. And I thought, oh my God, I love it that they're putting him through that. So, and then he said, the biggest difficulty is going to be remembering 25 women's names. Just really funny. I'm super excited about Gerry. I think he sounds like a really wholesome, lovely guy who's just looking for someone who puts him in his place and he can lay down next to and feel the love. And so what's not to love about that? So, and all the guys were like, you're the man, Gerry, and the grand zaddy. How funny, where they're like, listen, you have found love. You are our hero. And I really look forward to that. So stay tuned for more. Now, what about Bachelor in Paradise 2? Just for you to know, there's going to be some really interesting cast. Blake Moynes we're going to see. Avon Jones, Tyler, Eliza, Nate, Kat Izzo. We saw in the previews. Jess, Greer, Braden, as we know. Rachel Riccia is coming back. So exciting for all of that. So let me know what you thought of the tell-all, what your thoughts were, and how you're looking forward to the finale.